Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be erased from your own life story? I learned that feeling today at my only daughter's wedding, surrounded by 180 strangers who thought they knew me based on a lie. The setting was the grand Sterling mansion, a palace of gleaming marble and towering crystal chandeliers, where the very air smelled of expensive perfume and imported roses. I sat at a table in the back corner, a forgotten shadow in a tailored but simple suit, a deliberate contrast to the glittering opulence around me. My daughter Jasmine stood at the podium, a vision in a $20,000 wedding dress. I was not consulted on a dress that cost more than the first car her mother and I ever owned. At first her voice was honey sweet, a practiced performance of gratitude. She thanked her new in-laws, Charles and Brenda Sterling, for their incredible generosity for welcoming her into their world of effortless luxury. The Sterlings, seated at the head table like royalty, beamed and accepted the praise as their due. The wealthy guests nodded along, their diamonds glittering in the soft light of the ballroom. Then Jasmine's eyes, the same warm brown eyes as her mother's, scanned the room and found me. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly, and the honey in her voice turned to ice. And of course, she said, her voice now dripping with a false theatrical pity, "I want to thank my father, James." A polite, scattered applause filled the room, thin and hesitant. He did his best, I suppose. But his best, she paused for dramatic effect, wasn't enough to save my dear mother Eleanor from a life of struggle. It wasn't enough to give her a death with dignity surrounded by comfort. The room fell utterly silent. "I am just so incredibly grateful," she continued, turning her back on me and beaming at the Sterlings, "to finally have a family who understands what it means to build a real legacy, to have real status in this world." Charles and Brenda nodded smugly, their expressions a mask of feigned sympathy. Whispers erupted like wildfire around me as the guests turned to stare, their eyes filled with a disgusting mixture of pity and contempt for the failed man in the corner. I felt their judgment wash over me, a physical weight on my shoulders, but I did not flinch. I did not look away. I calmly picked up my glass of water and took a slow, deliberate sip. Because my daughter, in all her glorious, blinding ignorance, had no idea about the $33 million sitting in my private bank account. She had no idea about the solemn promise her mother had made me keep for 8 long, painful years. But she was about to learn. They all were. She was about to find out exactly why you never ever disrespect the quiet man. The memory of that wedding speech dissolved, replaced by the sterile, antiseptic smell of a hospital room 8 years ago. The world outside the window was a blur of city lights. But inside this small, quiet space, my entire universe had shrunk to the steady, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor in the frail hand I held in my own. Eleanor's hand, once so full of life, the hand that had held mine at our own wedding, that had soothed our crying baby, that had built our home, was now a fragile bird resting in my grasp. She was thin, her beautiful face etched with the cruel lines of her long battle, but her eyes, those same warm brown eyes I had fallen in love with 30 years prior, still held an unyielding fire. "James," she whispered, her voice a faint rustle of leaves, "we need to talk about Jasmine." I squeezed her hand gently, trying to pour all my strength, all my love into that simple touch. "We can talk about anything you want, my love," I said, my own voice thick with unshed tears. She managed a weak smile. "Don't you dare get sentimental on me now, old man," she teased, a flash of the fierce woman I knew. "We don't have time for it. I'm worried. I'm so worried about our little girl." I knew what she meant. We had both seen it, small things at first, then bigger things. A growing obsession with brand names, a subtle disdain for our simple, comfortable life, a constant comparison of herself to her wealthier friends. "She has a good heart, Eleanor," I insisted, wanting to believe it with every fiber of my being. "She's just young." Eleanor's gaze was piercing. "A good heart can be corrupted, James. And money, our kind of money, is a powerful poison if you're not prepared for it." We raised her to value hard work, integrity, kindness. We lived in our modest house and drove our old cars, not because we had to, but because we wanted her to understand that character is built, not bought. But I see the way she looks at things now. The way her eyes light up when she talks about the Sterlings and their summer home in the Hamptons. She doesn't see the years of work and sacrifice, she only sees the shiny result. If she gets her hands on our fortune now before she knows who she is, it will destroy her. It will turn her into a hollow, unhappy person, always chasing the next luxury item, the next thrill. I will not let that be my legacy. Her words hung in the air, heavy and true. She had always been the wise one, the anchor of our family. She was right. I knew she was right. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice finally breaking. Her grip tightened on my hand. "Promise me, James. Swear to me. You will not tell her about the full extent of our money. Let her think we are comfortable, but not wealthy. Let her build her own life. Let her struggle a little. Let her learn what it means to earn something for herself. Only then, only when you see that she has become a woman of substance, a woman that I would be proud of, can you tell her the truth." It felt like a betrayal, lying to my own daughter, especially after she lost her mother, but the look in Eleanor's eyes was a plea I could not refuse. It was her final wish. "I promise," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I promise you, Eleanor." A wave of relief washed over her features. She relaxed back into the pillows, her breathing a little easier. After a moment of silence, she fumbled for the worn smartphone on her bedside table. "Take this," she said, pushing it into my free hand. It was her old phone, the one filled with pictures and memories. "I've recorded some things, some messages for Jasmine for when she's older, and there's one for you." Her eyes locked onto mine and the fire was back burning with fierce intensity. "You listen to it only when you absolutely have to. I know you, James. You will keep your promise even if it hurts you. But there is a line, a red line. If she ever crosses it, if she ever becomes so lost that she disrespects our life, our love, our memory for her own selfish gain, then you have my permission. You have my blessing to break your promise. Let her know the truth, all of it. Do you understand?" I nodded, unable to speak, clutching the phone as if it were a sacred relic. It was a final gift, a final burden, a final testament to the incredible woman I loved. It was a promise sealed in a sterile room, a promise whose consequences I could never have imagined. 2 years passed, 2 long, hollow years. The sharp, gut-wrenching agony of Eleanor's absence slowly softened not into peace, but into a constant dull ache in my chest, a permanent phantom limb. A part of my soul was gone, and I knew it would never return. But life, in its relentless, indifferent way, continued. I found a new quiet rhythm, a grayscale version of my former life. My work as a defense contractor with its intricate problems and classified demands became my sanctuary, a place where logic reigned and emotion could be shelved. The silence in our modest house, once deafening, became a familiar if unwelcome companion. My focus, my entire world outside of those secure facilities, was Jasmine. She had been accepted into Howard University, a source of immense pride for me and the fulfillment of a dream Eleanor had always held for her. I would have moved mountains, drained oceans to see her walk across that graduation stage. Our phone calls were the highlights of my solitary weeks, brief bursts of color in my monochrome existence. Hearing her voice, listening to her stories about challenging classes and new friends allowed me to pretend I was still a good father, that I was still honoring Eleanor's memory by taking care of our greatest treasure. I was holding on to the fragile, desperate hope that the daughter Eleanor had worried about was blossoming into the woman we both knew she could be. That hope, however, was a fragile thing, and it was about to be shattered. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I had just finished dinner, a simple meal for one, and was settling down in my old armchair to review some project files. Seeing her name flash on the screen brought an instant, genuine smile to my face. "Hey, sweetie," I answered warmly. "How's my favorite student holding up?" At first the conversation was easy, comfortable. She asked about my week in a tone that felt slightly distracted, and I asked about her midterms, about which she complained with the dramatic flair of a typical college student. But then her tone shifted. A whining, complaining edge crept into her voice, a sound I hadn't heard since she was a teenager. "Dad, this dorm is just awful," she began, the words rushing out. "I really don't think I can take it for another year. It's like a concrete prison cell, not a place for serious study. The walls are so thin I can hear every little noise. The shared bathroom is always a disgusting mess, and my roommate, don't even get me started on her. It's impossible to study here. It's impossible to live here." I listened patiently, letting her vent, picturing my own cramped dorm room from 40 years ago, a space I had been incredibly grateful for. I was about to offer some fatherly advice, to suggest talking to the resident advisor, when she cut me off. Her voice suddenly bright and excited, a calculated shift in strategy, but I found the perfect solution. "There's this amazing new building, the Capitol Crest. It's only 10 minutes from campus and it's brand new. Dad, you should see it online. It has floor-to-ceiling windows, a state-of-the-art gym, a rooftop pool with a view of the Washington Monument, even a 24-hour doorman. It's safe, it's clean, it's perfect for my studies. All you have to do is co-sign the lease and set up the monthly rent payments. A cold dread washed over me. I was silent for a moment, the image of Eleanor in that hospital bed, her face etched with worry flashing in my mind. A rooftop pool, a doorman. This was exactly what she had feared. This was not a request for help. It was a test of my promise. Jasmine, I said, my voice deliberately calm and measured. That sounds very expensive. What's the rent on a place like that? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. It's a bit of a splurge, but it's an investment in my education. In my happiness, Dad, all my friends have beautiful apartments off campus. Marcus's parents got him a place just like it last year. It's just what people do. The mention of Marcus Sterling, her new boyfriend from a notoriously wealthy family, sent a small, cold signal of alarm down my spine. I had met him once. He was polite on the surface, but had an air of effortless entitlement that I instantly disliked. Sweetie, a rooftop pool is not an investment in your education, I said gently, trying to reason with her, trying to channel Eleanor's patient wisdom. I am more than happy to help you find a nice, clean, safe apartment. We can look together online. But a luxury penthouse is not something I'm going to just give you. Your mother and I always believed in the value of earning your own way. She didn't let me finish. Her voice rose sharp and angry, the entitled tone now undisguised. Believed in what? Making me struggle for no reason. I'm tired of struggling, Dad. I'm tired of being the only one of my friends who has to live in a dump while their parents actually care about them. I deserve nice things. The promise I made to Eleanor echoed in my ears, a solemn vow. I had to be strong for both of them. Jasmine, here is my offer, I said, my voice firm now, leaving no room for negotiation. You find a respectable, safe one-bedroom apartment near the university, something reasonable. You get a part-time job, something on the weekends or a few evenings a week at the campus library or a coffee shop. You pay for half the rent, and I will pay for the other half, plus all your utilities and groceries. Your mother and I both worked our way through college. There is no shame in it. It teaches you responsibility. It builds character. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, hostile. Then she exploded. It was a torrent of accusations and insults that felt like physical blows, each word laced with years of simmering resentment I never knew existed. A part-time job. Are you serious? I'm a full-time student at one of the best universities in the country. I don't have time to be a waitress because my own father is too cheap to support me. You just don't get it. You never have. Mom was the one who understood things, who had ambition. You were always content with your boring, simple life. You just want to keep me down. You want me to live a miserable little life just like you. You're just cheap. You have the money, I know you do, and you don't want me to have nice things. The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I stood in my quiet kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and a profound, hollow sadness. I walked into the living room and picked up my favorite photo of Eleanor, her smile radiant. Was I too hard on her? I whispered to the picture. Am I doing the right thing? Her silent, smiling face gave me the only answer I needed. I was honoring her. I had to believe it was the right path. For 3 days there was nothing. An agonizing, deafening silence. I called her twice a day, my calls going straight to voicemail. I sent texts. Jasmine, please call me. Let's talk. Sweetie, I'm worried about you. Please, just let me know you're okay. They were met with a digital void marked as read but unanswered. My anger faded completely, replaced by a gnawing parental worry. Was she safe? Was she eating? Had I pushed her away for good? The loneliness of the house seemed to amplify each silent corner, a testament to my failure. Finally, on the third night, unable to bear the not knowing any longer, I did something I rarely did. I opened her social media page, a world of curated happiness I often found bewildering. And there it was, a picture posted just an hour before. It was Jasmine beaming, holding up a shiny new set of keys, dangling them in front of the camera. Behind her was the gleaming glass entrance of a luxury apartment building, the words, "The Capitol Crest," etched in elegant gold lettering above the door. My blood ran cold. But it was the caption typed out beneath the impossibly happy photo that truly twisted the knife in my heart. It read, "New beginnings in my amazing new home. I am so incredibly blessed to have people in my life who truly support my dreams and believe in me. Thank you, Marcus, and the entire Sterling family for making this happen when others wouldn't. Some people just know what it takes to be happy." I stared at the screen at my daughter's smiling face, at the names of the people who had just bought her affection. I scrolled down and saw the comments. Brenda Sterling had written, "Anything for our future daughter. You deserve the world, sweetheart." Marcus had commented with a string of heart emojis. They had gone behind my back. They had used their money not just to give my daughter what she wanted, but to publicly humiliate me to prove a point. To show her that her own father was inadequate, that his values were outdated, that his love was conditional, while theirs was lavish and unconditional. The battle for my daughter's soul had begun, and I had just realized I was no longer fighting for it alone. I was fighting against the limitless corrupting power of the Sterling family fortune. 2 more years passed, marked by a strained and fragile peace. The fight over the apartment had carved a canyon between us, a distance that polite weekly phone calls could never bridge. I sent her money for books and expenses, which she accepted without thanks, and she sent me photos of her academic awards, which I praised with a heavy heart. We were playing the part of father and daughter, but the warmth, the effortless connection we once shared, was gone. It had been replaced by the cold, transactional influence of the Sterling family. I knew they were paying for her lavish lifestyle, for the designer clothes and expensive spring break trips she casually mentioned. I knew they were slowly but surely poisoning her mind against me, recasting my values as flaws and my prudence as neglect. But today I was determined to put all of that aside. Today was her graduation from Howard University. I sat in the vast crowd of proud parents, a sea of smiling faces and clicking cameras, and felt a swell of pure, uncomplicated pride. When Jasmine's name was called and she walked across the stage, her cap and gown barely hiding her confident swagger, I was on my feet, cheering louder than anyone. In that moment, she wasn't a source of worry or disappointment. She was my brilliant, beautiful daughter, the living legacy of my love for Eleanor. I held on to that feeling, hoping it could be the foundation for a new beginning, a bridge across the canyon that had opened between us. I had a gift for her, a special gift waiting in the parking lot. It was not a bribe or a grand gesture. It was a piece of our history, a piece of her mother's heart. After the ceremony, I found her near the main campus gate, surrounded by a group of laughing friends, Marcus Sterling at her side like a proud owner. I waited patiently until the group began to disperse, then approached her with a wide smile. "Jasmine, congratulations! I am so proud of you," I said, pulling her into a hug. For a moment she hugged me back, a fleeting glimpse of the little girl I remembered. "Thanks, Dad," she said, pulling away quickly. I reached into my pocket. "I have something for you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. I didn't just hand her the keys. I held them in my palm, letting them catch the afternoon sun. "This isn't just a gift, sweetie. This is a story." I told her about the car, Eleanor's beloved Buick. I reminded her of the road trips we used to take with her in the back seat, singing off key to the radio. I told her how her mother called it her dependable friend, the one thing that never let her down. I explained how I'd spent the last month getting it fully restored, not just a tune-up, but new tires, a new sound system, the leather seats conditioned until they were soft as butter. It was a piece of her mother meticulously cared for and preserved. "Your mother is so proud of you today, Jasmine," I finished, my voice cracking slightly. "And she would want you to have this. She always said this car would keep you safe, that it had a guardian angel in the passenger seat." With a trembling hand, I placed the keys in her palm. "It's yours." The smile on her face didn't just fade, it curdled. She looked at the classic Buick key in her hand, then glanced over my shoulder towards the faculty parking lot where I'd parked the polished, dark green sedan. Her face, a moment before flushed with success, was now a mask of pure, unadulterated disappointment. "Oh my God, Dad," she said, her voice a loud, horrified whisper that carried in the open air. "Are you serious? Who drives an old lady's car like this?" She looked around as if worried her friends might see. "This is my graduation day, not my retirement party. All my friends are getting new cars, real cars. This is embarrassing." She didn't just say the words. She spat them out, each one a venomous dart aimed at my heart. She tried to push the keys back into my hand. "I can't drive this. I just can't." Before I could even process the sheer cruelty of her rejection, a smooth voice cut in. "Having some trouble here?" Marcus. Sterling strolled up his arm, wrapping possessively around Jasmine's waist. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first 2 months' salary, and he looked at me with an expression of mild amusement as if I were a piece of lint on his perfect world. "Don't worry, James," he said, not even waiting for an answer. "I've got it covered." He shot Jasmine a dazzling smile. "I have a little something for you too, baby. Close your eyes." He led her a few steps away, leaving me standing there rejected and invisible. When she opened her eyes, he was pointing to the curb. Parked there was a brand new gleaming white Lexus, a massive red bow tied around its hood. Jasmine's reaction was a spectacle of manufactured joy. She shrieked a high-pitched sound of delight that grated on my nerves. She threw her arms around Marcus, kissing him dramatically as if they were in a movie. She ran to the car, caressing its hood, gushing about the leather interior, the sunroof, the sound system. The contrast between this over-the-top performance and the cold disgust she had shown me moments before was a deliberate and masterful act of cruelty. She was showing me my place. She was showing me that my gift, my history, my love was worthless compared to the cold, hard cash of the Sterling family. The final blow came, as it often did, from the cold, impersonal glow of a phone screen. She immediately began taking pictures, dozens of them. Posing in the driver's seat, kissing Marcus over the hood, holding up the new high-tech key fob. I stood a few feet away, completely ignored a ghost at my own daughter's celebration. Before they even drove off, in a cloud of smug satisfaction, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from her social media page. The picture was of her and Marcus kissing the Lexus gleaming in the background. The caption read, "The most amazing graduation gift from the most amazing man in the world. So blessed to have a partner who knows my worth and celebrates my success in style. New car, new chapter." There was no mention of her father. No mention of her 4 years of hard work. No mention of the woman whose memory I had tried to honor. I was erased. Eleanor was erased. In that moment, standing alone in the crowded parking lot, holding the keys to my dead wife's car, I felt the last flicker of hope for my daughter die out. The canyon between us was no longer just a canyon. It was a chasm, vast and dark and impossible to cross. And I realized with a chilling certainty that she had been the one to burn the bridge. The next 2 years were a masterclass in managed distance, a cold war fought over polite phone calls and unanswered text messages. Our relationship already fractured by the incidents with the apartment, and the car settled into a brittle, frozen stalemate. Jasmine graduated, and with the Sterling family's significant financial backing, started a small online boutique, a vanity project that sold overpriced clothing to her wealthy friends. I was living in a state of suspended grief, not just for Eleanor anymore, but for the daughter I felt I had well and truly lost. She was a stranger to me now, a carefully curated social media personality who spoke in a language of brand names and hashtags, a language I did not understand. Then came the engagement announcement. It arrived as most news of her life now did, through the cold glow of my phone screen. I did not get a phone call. I did not get a visit. I found out the way the rest of the world did, by seeing a professionally shot photo on her Instagram page. There she was, standing on the deck of a yacht in the Caribbean at sunset, a massive, impossibly large diamond ring on her finger, Marcus Sterling smiling possessively at her side. The caption was a long, gushing tribute to her prince, her soulmate, and the fairy tale life they were going to build together. I stared at the photo for a long time, a complicated storm of emotions churning inside me. There was a father's reflexive, hollow flicker of happiness for his daughter's future, but it was quickly extinguished by a deep, sinking dread. I knew what this meant. The Sterling family's influence was no longer a temporary collegiate phase. It was about to become a permanent, legally binding institution. Their values, their cold materialism would now be her family, her future. Despite the chasm between us, despite the years of accumulated hurt, I knew I had to try. For Eleanor's sake, for the memory of the family we once were, I had to make one last genuine effort to be her father on the most important day of her life. I waited a day for the social media frenzy to die down, then I called her. Her voice, when she finally answered after 3 rings, was distant, surprised that I had called. "Oh, hey, Dad." I ignored her coldness and pushed forward, my voice warmer than I felt. "Jasmine, sweetheart, I saw the news. Congratulations. He's a lucky man." There was a pause. "Thanks, Dad," she said, the words sounding rehearsed. I took a deep breath. "I'd like to take you all out to dinner to celebrate. You, Marcus, and his parents. My treat." I could hear her muffled voice speaking to Marcus in the background. After a moment, she came back on the line. "Okay, sure. The Sterlings can fit you in next Thursday." Fit me in? The choice of words was not lost on me. I chose the restaurant with painstaking care. It was an old, respected establishment in the city, a place of quiet elegance known for its impeccable food rather than its celebrity clientele. It was the kind of place Eleanor would have loved, with its dark wood, soft lighting, and hushed atmosphere. I arrived 20 minutes early, my heart pounding with a nervous, foolish hope. The Sterlings, of course, arrived 20 minutes late, sweeping in with the entitled air of people who believe the world should operate on their schedule. Brenda Sterling, a woman sculpted by surgeons and draped in a frankly obscene amount of silk, gave the restaurant a cursory, dismissive glance as if she had just stepped in something unpleasant. Her husband Charles, a man whose smile never quite reached his cold, calculating eyes, shook my hand with a grip that was more of an assessment of my net worth than a greeting. Jasmine and Marcus were attached at the hip, a perfect, polished, and utterly soulless couple. The dinner was a masterclass in passive aggression. Brenda complained that the wine list was adequate but uninspired. Charles asked me condescending questions about my line of work, his tone making it clear he considered any job that didn't involve a hedge fund to be a quaint hobby. I gritted my teeth and steered the conversation to the wedding. This was my chance. "I know you all have grand plans." I began looking first at Jasmine, trying to catch her eye, then at the Sterlings. But as the father of the bride, it would be my greatest honor to give Jasmine the wedding of her dreams. I've been thinking about it a lot. There's a beautiful botanical garden conservatory downtown. Eleanor and I used to walk there every spring when the cherry blossoms were in bloom. I saw a flicker of something in Jasmine's eyes, a ghost of a childhood memory. I pressed on my voice, filled with all the sincerity I could muster. It would be a beautiful, meaningful place to start your lives together. And of course, I would be honored to cover the entire cost of the event, whatever you choose. I said it with my whole heart on the table, offering them a bridge across the canyon, a bridge built with love and memory. Brenda Sterling looked at her husband, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. Then she turned to me and let out a small, tinkling laugh. It was one of the most condescending, soul-crushing sounds I had ever heard. "Oh, James," she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand as if I were a simple-minded child who had just presented her with a crayon drawing. "That's cute. A little garden party. It's a very sweet, sentimental thought." She withdrew her hand and picked up her wine glass, her point made. "But we and Jasmine want something a bit more memorable. Something with impact." Charles chimed in, his voice smooth as oil. "You have to understand, James. A wedding in our circle isn't just a family affair, it's a social event, it's a statement, it's about reinforcing connections, about status. We have an image to maintain. A small, sentimental wedding at a public garden just wouldn't be appropriate for Marcus and Jasmine's future." I looked at my daughter, pleading with my eyes for her to say something, to defend the memory of her mother, to defend me. She remained silent. She just stared down at her massive diamond ring, twisting it on her finger, her silence a complete and total betrayal. My offer had been rejected. The bridge was not only refused, it was burned to the ground before my eyes. The months that followed were a slow grinding and public humiliation. I was completely and systematically shut out of every aspect of the planning. I was not included on a single email chain from the celebrity wedding planner they hired. I was not invited to a single meeting about the catering, the music, or the guest list. I learned about the major decisions not from my daughter, but from her social media posts, each one feeling like a deliberate slap in the face. I saw the ridiculously expensive custom-designed dress she flew to New York to be fitted for a dress that cost more than my first home. I saw the announcement of the decision to hold the wedding not at a neutral venue, but at the Sterling family's own massive estate in Connecticut, a clear statement of ownership over the entire affair, including my daughter. I saw the professionally designed automated save-the-date email that arrived in my inbox, addressed to Mr. James Washington with all the warmth of a utility bill. I tried to call Jasmine to ask for details, to feel even tangentially involved. She was always too busy to talk, her voice strained and annoyed that I was bothering her. Her text message replies were short and dismissive, often just a single word. I felt like a stranger, a distant relative watching my daughter's life from the other side of a glass wall. The pain of this exclusion was profound, a constant grinding ache in my soul. I was being erased methodically and efficiently from the most important day of my daughter's life. The final insult, the one that extinguished the last embers of my hope and forged my pain into cold, hard resolve, arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. It came not as a phone call or a letter, but as a cold, impersonal email. The message was from Brenda Sterling's personal assistant. The subject line was stark and clinical wedding contribution. My heart sank. I opened it to find no personal message, no polite note, just a forwarded invoice from a high-end florist for the sum of $2,000 for bridal party floral arrangements. Beneath the invoice was a short-typed note from Brenda herself. It read, "James, we thought you might like to take care of this part to feel involved in the big day. We will be sure to put your name down as a contributor in the wedding program. Best, Brenda." I read the email 3 times, the words blurring in front of my eyes as the sheer breathtaking cruelty of it washed over me. A contributor. In the program. This wasn't an invitation to contribute to my daughter's wedding. This was a bill for my own irrelevance. They were charging me an admission fee to witness my own daughter's life. It was a power move designed to remind me of my place, to rub my nose in the fact that my only value to them was the small, pathetic amount of money they assumed I had. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The deep, aching hurt began to cool, to harden, to solidify into a block of ice in my chest. I opened my online banking portal and paid the $2,000 invoice immediately without a word of protest. But as I clicked confirm payment, the deliberate, precise click of the mouse echoing in the silent room, I made another silent vow. My hope was gone. My desire to bridge the gap was gone. All that was left was a cold, quiet rage and a newfound chilling clarity. They did not want a father-in-law. They wanted a doormat. And I was about to show them what happens when a doormat decides to stand up. The polite, scattered applause for Jasmine's speech died down, but the sound of my own blood roaring in my ears was deafening. The air in the grand ballroom, once filled with celebration, was now thick with a suffocating mixture of pity and awkwardness. 180 pairs of eyes belonging to people who wore more on their wrists than I had paid for. My first house darted towards me and then quickly away, as if my perceived failure was contagious. The whispers started a low, cruel hiss that slithered between the tables. I felt like an exhibit in a museum of broken dreams, the centerpiece of their evening's gossip. I had to get out. I needed air. I needed a moment away from the crushing weight of their judgment. I pushed my chair back, the sound scraping loudly in the sudden quiet. Every head at my table turned to look at me, their faces a mixture of alarm and morbid curiosity. They probably expected me to make a scene, to break down in tears or storm out in a rage. I did neither. I stood up, my movements slow and deliberate, and smoothed the front of my simple suit jacket. I met their gazes with an unnerving calm that seemed to unnerve them more than any outburst would have. I turned and walked through the crowded room, a solitary island in a sea of wealth. I could feel their eyes on my back, their whispers following me like a shroud. I walked past the towering cake, past the ridiculously oversized ice sculpture of a swan, and towards a set of ornate French doors at the far end of the room. I pushed one open and stepped out onto a secluded stone balcony. The cool night air was a welcome shock, a clean balm on my burning skin. Below me, the vast manicured lawns of the Sterling estate stretched out into the darkness, a perfect sterile landscape. I gripped the cold stone balustrade, my knuckles white, and took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to process the sheer, calculated cruelty of my daughter's words. She had not just insulted me. She had desecrated the memory of her mother, twisting our life of quiet, deliberate sacrifice into a narrative of pathetic failure. She had done it for them, for the Sterlings, for their approval, for their money, for their status. I was not alone for long. The door behind me was slightly ajar, and through it I heard voices sharp and cultured. I instantly recognized the viper's tongue of Brenda Sterling. She was speaking to another woman, her voice low but carrying clearly in the crisp night air. "That was quite a speech from your new daughter-in-law," the other woman said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Her father seemed, well. Brenda let out that same tinkling, condescending laugh I remembered from our disastrous dinner. "Oh, please," Brenda said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Jasmine's father is a pitiful man, truly. Charles and I see the girl as our little charity project, plucking her from that sad little life and giving her the world. It's been quite rewarding, actually. She's learned so quickly what's important. Charity project." Those 2 words struck me with the force of a physical blow. It was the final, clarifying piece of the puzzle. The years of slights, the constant humiliation, my daughter's heartless betrayal, it all snapped into a brutally sharp focus. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was a hostile takeover of my daughter's life, a war for her soul and an attack on my own dignity. In that moment, the deep, aching hurt that had been my constant companion for years vanished. It was burned away, replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. The time for grief was over. The time for honoring a promise of silence was over. A new promise now needed to be kept. The promise to protect Eleanor's memory. My hands were perfectly steady as I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I bypassed my own phone and pulled out Eleanor's old, worn smartphone, a device I had kept charged and close to my heart for 8 years. I connected my wireless earbuds, the small electronic chime in my ear signaling my readiness. I scrolled to the single audio file I had saved, the one labeled simply, "For James." I took one last look through the glass doors at the glittering, oblivious party inside. Then I pressed play. Eleanor's voice, faint and raspy from her illness, but filled with an unbreakable, steely resolve, filled my head. "James," she began, "if you are listening to this, it means the worst has happened. It means our little girl has lost her way. I know you, my love. I know you will keep your promise to me, even if it tears you apart. But there is a line, a red line. If she ever uses my death, our struggle, for her own selfish gain, if she ever uses it to humiliate you, the man I loved more than life itself, then she has crossed that line. In that moment, your promise to me is fulfilled, and a new one begins. Promise me you will not let her destroy our legacy with lies. Promise me you will stand up for the truth. Tell her the truth, James. Tell them all the truth. Set yourself free." I took out the earbuds, the last words echoing in my soul. Set yourself free. A final command from my beloved wife. A final permission. I slipped her phone back into my pocket, my eyes now as hard and cold as the stone beneath my feet. I looked back through the glass at the laughing, oblivious crowd. The decision was made. The time for silence was over. The quiet man was about to speak. I walked back into the grand ballroom from the cold, quiet balcony, but I was no longer the same man who had walked out. The hurt, the confusion, the deep aching grief had been cauterized, burned away by the cold fire of Brenda Sterling's words and the final loving command of my wife. I moved with a purpose I had not felt in years. The party was in full swing again, the orchestra playing a lively tune, the guests laughing and drinking the awkwardness of Jasmine's speech, now just a piece of forgotten gossip. A few people noticed me, their smiles faltering as they saw the expression on my face. I wasn't angry. I was something far more dangerous. I was resolved. I did not return to my designated table in the corner. I walked directly towards the brightly lit stage where the band was performing. The band leader, a man with a practiced, cheerful smile, faltered mid-song as I approached. The music sputtered to a halt. A confused silence began to spread across the room as hundreds of heads turned in my direction. I saw Jasmine sitting at the head table, her expression a mixture of annoyance and embarrassment at this new disruption. Brenda Sterling shot me a look of pure venom. I ignored them all. I walked up the small set of stairs to the stage, stood next to the microphone stand, and turned to the young man at the audio-visual console. "Excuse me, son," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to connect my phone to the sound system and to that projector screen behind me. It is very important." The request was so strange, so out of place, that he simply stared at me dumbfounded. I met his gaze without blinking. "Now, please." Something in my tone made him comply. He scrambled to find the right cables, his hands fumbling. The silence in the room was now absolute, thick with a tense, nervous anticipation. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the technician gave me a thumbs up. I took the microphone from its stand. It felt heavy and cold in my hand. I waited, letting the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. I looked out at the sea of confused, wealthy faces. Then I looked directly at my daughter. "Good evening, everyone." I began, my voice amplified throughout the massive room, steady and clear. My daughter Jasmine shared her version of our family's story earlier this evening, and I thank her for that. It takes a certain kind of courage to speak your truth, even if that truth is a complete and utter fantasy. But now, with your permission, I would like to share a different story, the real one. I held up Eleanor's old phone. My wife Eleanor was a wise and thoughtful woman. She loved our daughter more than anything in this world. But she also worried. She worried that Jasmine might lose sight of what was truly important in life. So before she passed, she left a message for her. A message of love, of warning. A message I was meant to give her when I felt she was ready to hear it. I looked at Jasmine, whose face was now a mask of confusion and dawning dread. I believe that time is now. I nodded to the technician. He pressed a button on his console, and then the room was filled with Eleanor's voice. It was weak, raspy from her illness, but every word was clear, filled with a mother's fierce, desperate love. "My dearest Jasmine," her voice echoed. "If you are hearing this, it means you are at a crossroads. I want you to remember the lessons we tried to teach you. That character is what you are when no one is watching. That love is not measured in dollars or diamond rings, but in loyalty, sacrifice, and truth. I want you to build a life, my love, not just buy one. Don't let the glitter of the world blind you to the gold that is already inside you. Make me proud." The recording ended, leaving behind a silence more profound than any I had ever heard. The guests were stunned, their faces frozen. Marcus looked utterly bewildered. Brenda Sterling's face was a thundercloud of fury, and Jasmine, my daughter's face, had crumpled. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by the pale shock of a child who had just seen a ghost. As Eleanor's voice faded, I spoke again, my voice now hard as steel. My daughter spoke of my failures. She spoke of the poverty I supposedly left her mother to die in. I have remained silent about my career for many years, bound by national security agreements and by a sacred promise to my wife to give our daughter a normal life. But my daughter has broken that silence, so I feel it is time to correct the public record. I nodded to the technician again. The giant screen behind me, which moments before had been showing a romantic slideshow of Jasmine and Marcus, flickered and changed. Now it displayed a crisp, clear PDF of a bank statement from a private wealth account. The camera of a virtual sort zoomed in on the final balance, the numbers stark and undeniable for everyone to see. $33,457,219.54. A collective gasp, a sound like the wind being sucked out of the room, swept through the crowd. The whispers that followed were no longer pitying. They were shocked, greedy, and utterly bewildered. I saw Charles Sterling lean forward, his eyes wide in disbelief, his mind no doubt racing. I let the image linger for a moment, letting the reality of it sink in. Jasmine also thanked the Sterling family for their incredible generosity. I continued, my voice cold and even, for giving her a world that I, her failed father, could not. I too would like to thank Charles and Brenda for being such gracious hosts tonight, for welcoming all of you into their magnificent home. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Or rather, what they have been calling their home for the past 3 years. I gave the final signal to the technician. The bank statement vanished, replaced by a legal document, a property deed. The owner's name was clearly visible at the top, the Washington Family Trust. This entire estate was purchased by my trust 3 years ago as a private investment. The Sterlings have been living here under a very generous $1 a year lease agreement, an agreement which by its terms is set to expire at the end of next month. I do hope they find their next accommodations suitable. I did not need to look at Charles Sterling to know he had turned pale. I could feel his world crumbling from across the room. Brenda's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. Finally, I turned my gaze back to my daughter. She was as white as a sheet, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief, her fairy tale wedding turning into a public nightmare. My voice softened, not with anger, but with a deep, profound sorrow. My daughter's words tonight have shown me that I have failed in my most important duty to honor her mother's greatest wish. Eleanor did not want to raise a wealthy child. She wanted to raise a good one. It is clear to me now that the fortune I have built will not bring Jasmine happiness, only a deeper slide into the moral emptiness she has so eagerly embraced. I took a deep breath, the finality of my next words weighing heavily in the air. Therefore, I have made a decision. Effective immediately, I am restructuring my will and my entire estate. Jasmine, I will be leaving you the sum of $1 a single bill so that no one in a court of law can ever contest that I forgot you in my final wishes. The remainder of my estate, currently valued at $74 million, will be placed in a charitable trust. This trust will be used to create and perpetually fund a new foundation dedicated to fighting a disease that disproportionately affects our community. I looked out at the stunned crowd. It will be called the Eleanor Washington Sickle Cell Anemia Research Foundation. I placed the microphone back in its stand, the soft thud echoing through the silent hall. That is my legacy. That is her legacy. Thank you for your time. I did not wait for the applause. I did not wait for the questions or the accusations. I placed the microphone back in its stand, the soft thud echoing through the cavernous silent hall like a judge's gavel. With every eye in the room fixed on me, I walked down the small steps from the stage, my posture straight, my stride even. I felt a strange and profound sense of calm, a quiet I had not known in 8 long years. I had spoken the truth. I had honored my wife. The weight of my promise had finally been lifted. As I walked towards the grand entrance, I allowed myself one brief glance at the head table. I saw the pure, unadulterated hatred in Brenda Sterling's eyes. I saw Charles Sterling, his face ashen, his mouth agape in disbelief. And I saw my daughter Jasmine. She was no longer a smug princess in a fairy tale. She was just a pale, terrified girl staring at me with the shattered eyes of someone whose entire world had just been systematically and publicly demolished. I did not look back again. I walked past the untouched 7-tiered wedding cake, past the gift table piled high with expensive offerings, and pushed open the heavy oak doors. I stepped out into the cool, clean night air, leaving the chaos to erupt in my wake. I was free. The moment the doors closed behind me, the spell of shocked silence in the ballroom shattered. The first sound was a strangled, horrified sob from Jasmine, but it was immediately drowned out by the raw, furious voice of her new husband. Marcus's handsome, privileged face was contorted into a mask of pure rage and utter humiliation. The romantic facade so carefully constructed for the cameras was gone. He turned on Jasmine, grabbing her arm with a force that made her wince. "You lied to me!" he hissed, his voice low and vicious for her ears only, but his anger was a palpable force. "Your whole life is a lie, a nobody. You told me your father was a pathetic nobody, a charity case. You made me and my family look like fools." His words were not those of a heartbroken groom, but of a CEO who has just discovered a massive fraud in a company he just acquired. Jasmine could only stammer, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I didn't know. I swear." Her pleas were cut short by a sharp, strangled gasp from the other side of the table. Charles Sterling, the patriarch, the master of his universe, had risen halfway from his chair, his face a ghastly shade of gray. He clutched his chest, his knuckles white, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and financial panic. The revelation that he was not the owner of his own home, that he was living on the charity of the man he had scorned, had been a blow too great for his heart to bear. Charles Brenda screamed, her voice a shrill, panicked cry that cut through the rising din of the room. "Someone call a doctor, he's having a heart attack!" The chaos exploded. The social disaster had now become a full-blown medical emergency. Waitstaff ran for water. A guest, a plastic surgeon, rushed forward. Brenda was torn between screaming at her husband to breathe and shooting murderous glares in the direction I had just exited. The dream wedding had officially descended into a scene from a nightmare. The guests, the crème de la crème of society, reacted not with compassion but with instinctual self-preservation. A panicked, undignified exodus began. They wanted no part of this spectacular implosion. All decorum was abandoned. Women in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos pushed and shoved their way towards the exit, desperate to get to the valet and escape the toxic fallout. But among the stampede, there were the vultures. Those who saw this not as a tragedy but as content. Phones which had been politely put away were now held high, their small red recording lights blinking in the dim light. They filmed everything. The bride sobbing hysterically, being berated by her furious new husband. The father of the groom, pale and gasping, being attended to on the floor. The mother of the groom, her mask of composure finally cracking, screaming at the staff. It was a goldmine of glorious, scandalous social media fodder. Within minutes, the once magnificent ballroom was a scene of devastation. It looked like the aftermath of a shipwreck. Abandoned champagne glasses, half-eaten plates of expensive food, overturned chairs, and discarded party favors littered the floor. The giant ice sculpture of the swan was beginning to melt, weeping watery tears onto the pristine white tablecloth. And in the middle of it all, Jasmine was left utterly alone, a solitary figure in white, her perfect dress, now just a costume for a tragedy. Her sobs were the only sound in the ruined hall. Before the night was even over, before the caterers had even started to clear the wreckage, The first shaky phone videos began to appear online. They were uploaded to TikTok, to Instagram, to X, with sensational titles: Billionaire Dad Destroys Daughter's Wedding, Sterling Wedding Disaster Live, You Won't Believe What This Father Did. The story was no longer a private family matter. It had become public entertainment, a viral sensation, a modern-day morality play for the entire world to watch, judge, and share. A year can feel like a lifetime. The viral storm that had erupted from the ashes of my daughter's wedding had raged across the internet for weeks, a furious, sensational blaze. I had been hounded by reporters, by opportunists, by distant relatives I hadn't heard from in decades. I ignored them all. I changed my number, moved to a quiet, unlisted apartment in the city, and waited for the fire to burn itself out. And eventually it did. The world, with its insatiable appetite for new drama, moved on, leaving behind the wreckage of the Sterling's reputation and my daughter's future. I had heard whispers through my lawyers. The Sterlings had been forced to sell their other properties to cover massive business debts after their social standing evaporated overnight. Marcus and Jasmine's marriage, built on a foundation of lies and greed, had lasted less than a month. I felt nothing when I heard this news. No satisfaction, no vindication, no pity. It was simply the logical conclusion of a story I was no longer a part of. My story was now being written elsewhere. Today I was standing in a place that was the complete opposite of that opulent, toxic ballroom. I was in the atrium of a state-of-the-art medical research center, a building filled with the quiet, determined hum of progress and hope. The air here didn't smell of expensive perfume. It smelled of clean labs and fresh coffee. Sunlight streamed through a massive glass ceiling, illuminating the focused faces of doctors and scientists in white coats. I was not a guest here, not an outsider. I was a part of its very foundation. I stood before a wall of polished granite, my eyes fixed on a newly unveiled brass plaque. The engraving was simple, elegant, and to me it was the most beautiful work of art in the world. It read, "The Eleanor Washington Sickle Cell Anemia Research Wing." I reached out and traced the letters of her name, the cool metal, a solid, tangible reality. This was real. This was what had come from the pain, from the lies, from that one final public act of truth. A young, brilliant doctor, the head of the research department, approached me with a warm smile. "Mr. Washington," she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude, "it's an honor to have you here today. The first round of patient trials for the new gene therapy protocol, the one your initial funding made possible, began last week. It's too early to say for sure, but the preliminary results are more promising than we could have ever dared to hope." She went on to explain the science, the complex genetics, the incredible potential. I listened, absorbing it all, my heart swelling with a quiet, profound pride. This was Eleanor's true legacy. Not a mansion, not a diamond ring, but a chance at a cure, a chance at life for people she would never know. Later I found a quiet bench in a small garden atrium, a peaceful oasis in the heart of the building. I pulled the latest quarterly report from the foundation out of my briefcase. It was filled with charts, budget allocations, scientific abstracts, and testimonials from families who were part of the new clinical programs. I read about a little boy who could now play outside without fear of a pain crisis. I read about a young woman who was now strong enough to attend college. Each story was a testament to the fact that I had made the right choice. I thought about the $74 million. In Jasmine's hands, it would have been a poison, a curse that would have fueled a lifetime of emptiness. Here, it was a miracle. It was an engine of hope. The anger I had carried for so long was gone. The deep, aching disappointment in my daughter was gone. All that remained was a vast, quiet, and unshakable peace. The revenge was never the point. It was just the necessary, painful surgery required to cut the cancer of lies from our lives. The true purpose was this: to transform our family's wealth, a secret I had carried like a burden, into a public blessing. I looked out a large window, not at a manicured private lawn, but at the bustling, vibrant city, a world teeming with life and struggle and hope. The sun was warm on my face. For the first time I could think of Eleanor not with the sharp, stabbing pain of loss, but with the gentle warmth of a shared and completed mission. We had built something that would outlast us both. The finality of my decision a year ago had not been an ending, it had been a beginning. I was free. Free from the promise of silence. Free from the anger and the disappointment. Free from the role of the quiet, grieving man in the corner. I was no longer just Jasmine's father or Eleanor's widower. I was James Washington, a man at peace with his past, and for the first time in a long time, hopeful for his future. The respect you give is the respect you get. True wealth isn't measured by bank accounts, but by the integrity you maintain when no one is watching. Silence can be a shield, but truth, when finally spoken, is a sword that cuts through all deception to reveal character.